Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 19th of October, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, an interesting tweet out from Scott Lewis today, and I'll read out the tweet first. He said, FTX is spending money to push a law through Congress that may force DeFi protocols to operate like centralized exchanges. The proposal is called the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act. A better name would be the Digital Commodities FTX Protection Act. And FTX obviously is founded and run by SBF, who has been a character, that's for sure, over the last, 2-3 years in particular. Now, I want to start this by saying that I wouldn't normally cover something like this if it was just one person saying it, but I have heard this from multiple people now, so it leads me to believe that there's truth to this. It's not just some random rumor, it's not just some random FUD, there's actually truth to this. And it got me thinking. Like, I've been hearing this over the past 1 to 2 weeks, actually, and only now that Scott went public with it like this, that I figured, okay, there's enough people talking about it, I'm going to cover it on the Refuel. But the way I'm thinking about this is, okay, well, I don't really see how it makes much sense for SBF to do this, right? Like, SBF has been a profit maximalist his entire time that he's been in crypto. He's made a lot of money, right? He's made tens of billions of dollars from this industry. But when I think about what he's doing here by pushing this through, like, doesn't this harm him? Doesn't this harm his ability to make money? And at face value, it does. But then you can think deeper about this and think exactly what he's trying to do here. What I think he's trying to do is just self-preservation at the end of the day, because the way I look at it and the way I see it, and this is just pure speculation on my behalf, but I mean, you connect the dots, things start to make sense. What he did was he made a lot of money, and he made a lot of money illegally. Now, depending on what nation you're referring to is what's illegal in some, nations, what's not illegal in others. But a lot of the stuff that he did was not legal by financial regulatory standards. Now, of course, most of crypto is unregulated, so what he did at the time, I guess, maybe wasn't illegal, and there's obviously going to be new legislation that comes through that maybe makes what he did, illegal and codifies it. But we all know what he used to do, right? And we all know the casino he ran. We all know, still runs, right? He has so basically the playbook generally is invest in a new protocol, right? Get an early stage kind of token allocation, farm the token, list the perps on the exchange, be the market maker as well, because they have a market making firm, Alameda, and basically do all of that and create like this, I guess, feedback loop where they basically win no matter what. And it doesn't matter if there's vesting on the tokens. What they can do is they can just short the perp on their exchange, which they control, right? And then just cover the short one once their tokens have vested. And at the end of the day, they have a lot of connections, a lot of big money connections that they can do this with. And usually those people were in on this game as well. So there was a lot of dodgy stuff that has happened with SBF over the last few years. And that's where he's made the majority of his money. Okay, well, what does that do? Well, that puts a target on his back, right? Regulators look at this industry and they think, okay, well, who are the big players of this industry? Who are the biggest players? And they are centralized exchanges. That is the on and off ramp. That is where the most money runs through crypto, right? Okay, what are the biggest exchanges? Well, Coinbase. Okay, well, Coinbase is fully US regulated already, so there's not much really to look into there. Kraken, right? Same deal. Binance is, they've cleaned up their act a lot lately, but still, they've done a lot of dodgy stuff too, but they're offshore. They do a lot of regulatory arbitrage. CZ is not a US citizen. And then you look at FTX, right? Okay, FTX has a US-based exchange as well. Used to be in the US. I mean, SBF until recently, until maybe the last, 6 to 12 months, was in the US, operating out of the US. He's worked in the US. I believe he's a US citizen. So you look at that and you're like, okay, well, this is the kind of guy that we should go after, right, so to speak, or go and question. Now, I think SBF anticipated this, and he's front-running it by basically presenting himself as this, I guess you can call it, a good guy to the politicians, to the regulators, being like, hey, I'm here, I'm an open door, come ask me whatever you want, I'll tell you how this industry works, I'll tell you, where all the dodgy actors are, I'll tell you how to regulate it, essentially. So, as I said, I believe this is self-preservation. Even if it hurts his maybe short to medium-term profits that he can make, I think it increases his long-term chances of, 1, staying in business, 2, not facing massive fines, 3, potentially, not going to prison, which I don't think would happen. But, there's always a chance, right? So I think he's just protecting himself by doing this, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because at the end of the day, he's made most of his money from things like DeFi, from farming those tokens, from doing lots of on-chain stuff, stuff. And if he crippled that, then he would cripple his revenue source, right? But if the point of crippling it is to basically be a friend of regulators, and we know that he's donated to politicians, we know that he plans to donate hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, to politicians in the US, well, you only do that if you're doing the self-preservation strategy, right? And he probably believes long-term this will be good for him, because what will end up happening is that he'll have FTX get preferential treatment, right? Because he's friends with the regulators. They'll regulate FTX. They'll give them all the necessary licenses, everything that they need in order to list these things, to trade these things, to be that kind of place to do all these sorts of stuff. And then the other exchanges and the other services will maybe get those licenses eventually, but they'll be, I guess, handicapped by the fact that they'll come later, right? And then everyone just gets funneled into FTX. That's probably the master plan here. So as I said, I've seen this from multiple people now, so I don't think this is FUD. And if you know anything about SBF and the FTX ecosystem, you know that there have been very profit maximalist driven for the entire time that they've existed. I mean, it's the only way SBF was able to make so much money so quickly. And now, I guess the chickens have come home to roost, and he's probably seeing this and being like, okay, I need to get ahead of this, right? I need to front run these regulators, and this is the way he's doing it. Again, this is just speculation on my behalf here, but I think it's very prudent to be aware of these things. From what I've heard, there's not a super high chance of something like this passing. Obviously, the political landscape is quite complex in the US, but still, this thing is being pushed through, or trying to be pushed through. It seems that SBF and the FTX, I guess, ecosystem is trying to push it through because they think it's going to benefit themselves. We have to fight back against this. I personally can't really fight. I mean, I'm not a US citizen. I can't vote in elections, right? I mean, I know that the midterms are coming up next month. I can't vote in those, obviously. Not much I can do on the lobbying side of things. Unfortunately, I'm not a billionaire, so I can't. I mean, even if I don't think you need to be a billionaire to lobby, but I definitely don't have enough money to be spending on lobbying. Maybe it's not even legal for me to do that as an Australian citizen to lobby US politicians. I'm not even sure about that. But I do think there's probably people on the other side of this. Either they're part of, massive VCs and funds like A16Z, for example, or they're the Coinbases and the Krakens of the world, because I think those exchanges are definitely on the side of crypto, especially Kraken. Kraken has always been very friendly to crypto. Coinbase has been warming up over the last maybe 1 to 2 years, a lot more than they traditionally have been in terms of the crypto mission, values, ethos, and ideals, and all that sorts of stuff. And because those two are proper US-based, right? US-based companies, especially Coinbase that's public, I definitely have a lot of sway there. And those big VCs and funds have been in the political arena, especially someone like something like A16Z. They've been in that arena for quite a while. So yeah, but anyway, as I said, I think it's prudent to be on top of these things. Not much we can do as individuals. I mean, if you're a US citizen, you can obviously vote for various politicians that support or don't support this, depending on what your view on things are. And you can also write to the politicians, right? You can express your concern, write to the regulators. You can make noise about this. But even as non-US citizens, you can still make noise about this, right? You can spread this on Twitter, make sure people are aware of it, and I guess make YouTube videos about it, like what I'm doing, right? But yeah, anyway, moving on from that one to some, I guess, Ethereum protocol related updates. So, well, I mean, this isn't Ethereum protocol related, but I think it's relevant here because Moloch DAO. Now, this is something that's been around for a while. It was launched in the last bear market. And for those of you who don't know what Moloch DAO is, it was basically the first big instantiation of public goods funding on Ethereum other than Gitcoin grants. And what it tried to do was slay this demon or devil called Moloch, right? Which is the god of coordination, right? So basically the problem was at the time during the last bear market, there was problems with funding, especially for core development. So Moloch DAO was launched and a bunch of ETH whales got together. They put ETH into it. And the thing is that at any time, someone could quote unquote rage quit from the DAO and take their ETH with them. But there was no guarantee you would get the same share back depending on what ETH was already donated or what ETH was already given to these public goods. But it was this kind of big first attempt of funding those public goods on Ethereum. Now, Moloch V2 might be deployed to StarkNet here. So there is a link here of Moloch on StarkNet MVP. So implementing most of Moloch v2 features, adding new functionalities, and running on StarkNet. So it's already running as an MVP, which is really, really cool. So this site, you can check out all the details. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight this because Moloch was definitely a big thing back in that last bear market, and it influenced a lot of the ways we thought about public goods funding, and it influenced a lot of the community around values and around how they looked at coordination issues. Because at the end of the day, when I think about issues, not only within crypto, but worldwide issues, it always comes back to coordination. And Kevin Owocki from Gitcoin is a pretty big advocate of this. Like, if we can't coordinate, right, if we don't have the tools to coordinate in a certain way, then the outcomes of the way we do coordinate dictate our reality. So, for example, if all we have is really shitty ways to coordinate, like you live under a dictatorship, or you live in, you live under a country where democracy is not observed, well, you don't really have great ways of coordination. Your coordination is basically someone telling you what to do, like the government basically telling you what you can and can't do from like a very, very top-down centralized approach, right? Whereas in democracy, you at least have the option of coordinating by voting, right? By voting for different politicians and changing the guard, so to speak, every few years in most countries. So it literally all comes back to coordination when thinking about these macro level, society level problems. And the same is true within crypto. The funding issues came back to coordination. Once Moloch DAO was spun up, more things got funded. Then Gitcoin Grants was ramping up, more things got funded. And we have things like the Ethereum Foundation support program as well. And there's a bunch of other initiatives too. So when we can coordinate better, we can coordinate capital better, and then we can get it to the places where it needs to be. And that's basically the whole point of Gitcoin Grants with the quadratic funding as well, is that we want to be able to coordinate better, but we also want to make people's donations have more impact. So let's do quadratic funding, which has obviously been very successful over the last few years. But cool to see Moloch v2 live on StarkNet. I'll link this in the YouTube description for you to go check out. All right, so StakeWise has a great thread out today about decentralization on Ethereum. So they started this thread by saying, decentralization of Ethereum is not a given. Every wallet that's staking ETH is responsible for where we land on the decentralization axis. So how do we tip the scale in favor of more solo operators? A thread about the mission of StakeWise v3 in the staking ecosystem. And you can read this thread, I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I did cover what StakeWise v3 was a few weeks ago, how they're trying to be, to basically be a fully decentralized liquid staking protocol, like Rocket Pool, for example, and they're going to be using DVT technology to achieve this. But I want to focus on here for a minute the first part of this tweet where they said, decentralization of Ethereum is not a given. This is so very, very true. It's not a given, guys. The only reason that decentralized blockchains exist and can continue existing is that social layer that I always talk about, right? And the social layer influences the technical layer and also influences the distribution of things like stake. That's why they say, how do we tip the scale in favor of more solo operators? Because the more solo validators there are, the better the decentralization for Ethereum is. It's not totally one-to-one, black and white like that, but it is mostly like that, because at the end of the day, if you're a solo, unaffiliated operator, right, and you operate various validators, whether it's 1 or 100, it doesn't matter, you are adding a whole lot of decentralization to the Ethereum network. Now, of course, not all solo validators are created equal. Maybe you are a bad solo validator and you only keep your node, your validator online 50% of the time, right? Or maybe you are a solo validator that is using a censoring relayer, for example. So you're contributing to censorship on the Ethereum network. So as I said, not all solo validators are created equal. If I had to pick like the perfect solo validator, it would be one that's running just a validator, no MEV boost, right? Because by running MEV boost, you're giving up a bit of decentralization by outsourcing your block building duties to flashbots, not flashbots, to the different relays, depending on what relay you use. So if you want to be a good solo validator, the perfect solo validator, essentially what you want is 100% uptime, or as near to 100% uptime as you can get, which would involve having a UPS or an uninterruptible power supply, backup internet in case your internet goes down. In order to keep that validator online 100% of the time, you'd have the necessary hardware, and you'd make sure that everything was up to date and everything was running smoothly, and you were just using and you were using maybe a minority client, right, as well. So like, there's a lot that goes into it, and that's why I said not all solo validators are created equal. But a solo validator is much better for decentralization, right? You as an individual, as a solo operator, I should say, is much better for the decentralization of Ethereum than any of the staking pools. I mean, even Rocket Pool, like I love Rocket Pool. It's it's decentralized, it's great, but I mean, like in terms of what adds more decentralization to the network, being a solo validator, you can't beat that, right? But in saying that, there is a spectrum. There is a very broad spectrum where you have centralized exchange staking on one end, solo validating on the other end. Rocket Pool is like just behind solo validating. It's very, very close. Then StakeWise V3 hopefully gets there. Lido, I mean, Lido is quite centralized today, but it's not as centralized as centralized exchanges because it at least distributes the stake to different operators. So there is a spectrum there. There is an access, so to speak, and we want to move as far towards the solo validator side of it as possible for the majority of the stake on the Ethereum network. That is the entire point of why we spent so long building this Ethereum proof of stake protocol, so that we can actually get there. Now, is it ideal today? Is it where we want it to be today? No, it's not at all. And I mean, I think a big part of that is because of the fact that we haven't enabled withdrawals yet. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot, but we're not there yet. So how do we get there? Well, we build better tools. We build, there's more competition. We make it easier for people to solo validate, right? We build better staking pools, are ideally decentralized ones, and we move people towards that end of the spectrum rather than the centralized exchange and operator end of the spectrum, which is obviously not ideal. But in saying that, they're always going to exist. And as I've said before, I don't think that any one, entity should have more than 10% share on the Beacon chain. Ideally, we would have it at 5% or less, but I don't think that's going to happen just based on the laws of distribution there. I think that if we can get to no operator having more than 10% share on the network, or no entity, I should say, that would be killer, right? That'd be absolutely awesome. That would be the ideal world. But in saying that, that's nuanced as well, because what if we have, for example, we have 10 entities with 10% each on the network, but all those entities are centralized? Well, that's no good because it's basically just centralized then, right? So that's why I always say, when looking at the decentralization of Ethereum, the things like distribution of stake and all that sorts of stuff around that, there is so much nuance to it that you can't just boil it down to a simple narrative, a simple FUD tweet that all these people like to boil it down to on Twitter. It just doesn't work like that, right? So yeah, anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because if I keep going, I'm going to go way over time here. I've got a bunch of other things to get through. But yeah, good thread here from StakeWise. Definitely go give it a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so speaking of staking, ChainSafe, the team behind, or I guess like the developers behind the Lodestar consensus layer client, has announced that they've raised a $18.75 million oversubscribed Series A round. So congratulations to them on this round. It was they were backed by a bunch of well-known names within the ecosystem, such as Consensus, Fembushi Capital, IOSG Ventures, and more. I'm not sure which angels participated in this round, if any. I don't know if that's in the blog post, actually. That's not the blog post. This is the blog post. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, ChainSafe don't only build the Lodestar client on Ethereum and related infrastructure. They also build on other networks as well. They've always had a multi-network, multi-chain vision of crypto, and they've stuck to that. They currently build on Polkadot and Filecoin and some others out there. So it's just great to see them, I guess, like still sticking to their roots of what they believe in, but, obviously also working in Ethereum, and investors are seeing this, which is very, very cool. So congrats to them on this raise. This will give them the money they need to keep building what they've been building. All right, last thing on staking is the Beacon Chain website here has execution rewards that are now displayed on the validator page. So validator history is in Gwei instead of ETH. Daily income chart distinguishes between execution layer and consensus layer rewards. API and income does not respect the EL reward for now. Mobile app will include EL rewards soon. So essentially what you can see here now is a breakdown of what reward you're getting from transactions, or MEV, so transaction fees, I should say, and MEV, so transaction related tasks, and also what you're getting from the consensus layer, which is those block rewards for proposing a block and also for attesting to blocks and also being part of sync committees, right? So really cool to see this. I'm sure a lot of you use the Beacon Chain website to monitor your validators. I know I do, and it's just a really, really awesome tool. So you can go check this out on your own validators. All right, so I think this was one of the biggest announcements over the last 24 hours out of Lattice here. So I did talk about this yesterday a little bit about this OP stack that Optimism brought out, and also around gaming and how I believe that the next era of crypto gaming isn't just going to be slapping NFTs on games. It's going to be building what's called autonomous worlds and fully on-chain games. Well, we already have one of those that's live right now for you to play called OPCraft. So Lattice introduced this today. So they've said over the last few months, we've been working on an exciting technical collaboration with Optimism. Using our MUD on-chain game engine, which I spoke about the other day, and Optimism's OP stack, we built a 3D autonomous world, which is basically a clone of Minecraft called OPCraft. And I have a treat for you. I have it loaded up right here on my screen. If it wants to load, there we go. So you can see it is a clone of Minecraft. I haven't really done much. I kind of like mined some blocks and started building something that doesn't really resemble anything here. But essentially every action is actually on-chain. So you can't see it, but in the bottom left, when I do this, right, when I kind of like mine something or break something, it will say on the left-hand side, mine transaction for grass. And that'll actually be fully on-chain. So all of this, all the player actions, everything happening on here, there's 28 other players in here right now. It's all happening on-chain, on a chain that's using the OP stack, which I think is absolutely awesome, because if we can get like fully on-chain, scalable, global scale games, then we can have those fully decentralized autonomous worlds that we've always wanted from crypto gaming. Like, I don't want crypto gaming to just be defined as slapping NFTs on something and slapping loot boxes on something and calling it a day. I want to see what new things we can do with this technology with gaming, because you guys know I'm a big gamer. Not as much these days, but I used to be a lot bigger as a gamer. I think these days a lot of games actually suck. So I'm excited to see what comes out of the crypto gaming space, but not the crypto gaming space where they're just adding NFTs to stuff. I don't think that's enough of a differentiator between what we already have. What I would like to see is more of this sort of stuff, this fully on-chain games. Yes, okay, it's a clone of Minecraft, but still, it's just a proof of concept, right? It's showcasing their technology here, that this actually works on a layer 2. And you can see here that I can't even build or mine on some blocks because the chunk of this block has been claimed by this address here. And when I say a block, I mean like this grass block. I don't actually mean like a block on a blockchain, right? It's a bit confusing when you think about Minecraft like that. Oh, that's what I was building over there before you saw. I was building a blockchain. Oh, someone's spelled out something here. Shin? Oh, I guess it's Shin. Maybe someone's name. Yeah, you can see the OP logo here as well. So I don't know. As I said, guys, I think this is just really cool. Nice little proof of concept. You can go check it out for yourself as well. All you have to do is verify on Twitter, and you can get started with it. I'll, of course, link it in the YouTube description below. You can go get started. But there's a few things built around here. I don't know if people have built these or if this was in here to begin with, but you can see select. Okay, yeah. I'm just going around and just walking around right now looking at things, but you can see there's just tons of blocks there for you to mine and for you to do stuff with. I did see some people before actually doing stuff. And there you can see someone's built something there, but I don't know where they are right now. This world is obviously huge. Minecraft worlds, for those of you who don't know, are absolutely massive. But yeah, I don't know where the people are right now, but I have seen them. And on my bottom left, it shows that there's 33 people here right now. Hopefully I see one before I move on. Nah, it doesn't look like I will. Oh, there's some water. Yeah, I haven't played much of it because I just got into it before, and then obviously need to do the refuel. But yeah, anyway, you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so I talked about Fire the other week, actually. There was this new kind of app that you could sideload with your MetaMask wallet that would basically give you a more detailed breakdown of what's happening with your transactions. So apparently, they're going to be launching to the public next Monday. So there was over 10,000 people who signed up for the waiting list, and you will be the first to get access if you have signed up to the waiting list, and they're still giving out access throughout the week. So yeah, next Monday this will be publicly available for people, which is really, really cool. I'm not sure if this is open source yet, so I don't know if you should trust it just yet. But if it is, then you should go check it out and see if other people have commented on it or anything like that. But if you have been invited to the beta and have had a chance to play around with it, maybe let me know how that was in the Discord channel. I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, just wanted to give you guys a heads up. This is going to be available to the public next Monday. And you guys know I gave this a lot of praise a few weeks ago because I thought it was just a much needed tool for people to be able to see what their transactions are actually doing. Because MetaMask doesn't give you much information there, for better or worse. But yeah, you can go check this out next Monday once it launches, and I'll hopefully have to cover it next Monday to remind you guys, but just in case, maybe set a reminder for yourself as well. All right, so Josh Stark here has put together a Twitter thread catching up on the DevCon 6 talks, part 1, which is the Layer 2 talks. So these are Josh's curated talks about Layer 2s from DevCon. So if you're looking for Layer 2 talks to pay attention to watch, well, these are the ones to do here. And for those of you who don't know, Josh Stark has been working within Ethereum for quite a while now. He works at the Ethereum Foundation. He writes the Year in Ethereum review with Evan Van Ness. So a very long time contributor to the Ethereum community. And I trust his opinion on these sorts of things. So you can go check out this thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, last up here, we have a big announcement out of A16Z Crypto today. They are announcing the launch of their new accelerator called Crypto Startup School. This program will include investment from A16Z of $500,000 or up to $500,000, mentorship from leading founders, advice from domain experts, and a network of fellow builders. You can now apply at this link here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. A16Z isn't just a crypto, I guess, like VC, right? The A16Z parent company. They've got the A16Z crypto division and a bunch of other divisions out there, but they've been around for a long time. They're a fund that has a lot of money, and they're probably, I think, one of, if not the biggest funds in the US, right? They also invest in a lot of things, and they also tend to take a little bit of a shotgun approach to investing in crypto. But what I mean by that is that they invest in a lot of things in crypto, and unfortunately, I mean, a fair bit of those things are actually just garbage, right? But in saying that, I still think you should give credit where it's due, and them doing things like crypto startup schools, investing in teams, mentoring teams, and getting people connected to founders of their portfolio companies and things like that. I think that's really, really cool. Yes, maybe they're doing it for selfish reasons as well, because by investing in these teams really early on, they get their first check in, right? And normally, obviously, as an investor, as a VC, you want to be as early as possible, especially if you're open to doing as early as possible deals, at pre-seed sort of thing. But still, at the end of the day, they're going to give you access to a network that you just wouldn't have access to otherwise. And as I said, their network is absolutely massive, inside and outside of crypto. They've been around for such a long time now. It's got to be over 20 years at this point. Because I remember A16Z, they made a lot of money during the internet era because they funded a lot of successful internet-based companies, and now they're doing the same with crypto. But as I said, they have funded a bunch of crap in crypto, especially layer ones. They love layer ones. They do have this thesis around block space being the most valuable thing in crypto. I don't necessarily agree with that thesis, because we've already seen there's an abundance of block space, but I mean, most of the tokens aren't worth very much. Whereas Ethereum layer 1 has the least amount of block space, right? But has the most valuable block space, and also ETH is obviously the most valuable smart contract related token by far, smart contract blockchain related token by far. So I disagree with that thesis, but in saying that, they've also funded Optimism and I think some other layer 2s, so they recognize the importance of layer 2s as well. And I've talked about how I think investors, even the big ones, lag the crypto narratives by 6 to 12 months as well, but that's a discussion for another day, or maybe I'll bring it up in the future again. But I just wanted to highlight this for anyone who was wanting to be part of a crypto startup school or crypto accelerator. You should check out this from A16Z Crypto. I'll link this in the YouTube description below, but I think that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.